Welcome back to the ADAC Sim Racing Expo 2023 with a very special guest, the very handsome, very intelligent Suelio Almeida, also now author of the Motor Racing book. Suelio, tell the people at home and the people watching, who are you?
I am a sim racer. I started getting very good at coaching just because I started doing it to pay my university. And then I was doing it more and more and more and more and more and more and more. And then I realized, wait, this can be my lifetime job, you know? So I started actually focusing on it, ditched my master's degree in piano to focus 100% on it. And then I started realizing so many patterns when I was coaching. Over 2,000 sessions currently in around 3 years. It's pretty much my life. I learned so much, so many patterns that I decided to just start writing things, putting names to these patterns, and ended up creating like an online course that did very well. And from the script of that online course, I was like, wait, this, like each of these lessons, they feel like a chapter. I'm gonna write a book on it. 1 year and a half after, like pretty much 30 minutes to 1 hour writing every day, non-stop, disciplined, a long process of editing, formatting, and sending it to real life drivers, sending it to esports drivers. Hey, is this good? Can it be better? Like, what is missing? And the feedback was good. It was like, yeah, let's publish it. So it's been a long process, but it's just the beginning.
Well, talk us through it then. The Motor Racing book available on Amazon, of course. There's a few copies here that people can buy from you. Talk us through the book itself.
When you're driving in real life, the fundamentals are so difficult to apply because you're dealing with fear, you're dealing with so many variables. But in the simulator, you go through that, and then you get into a zone where the small details count. This is where I get in, you know, like as soon as you get on the last second, some concepts and some habits that you built, they start to count. Like for every 100th of a second, like that you're missing, there's a very specific reason, subtle reason. My mission was to, after reading a lot of books, I read Ross Bentley, I read Carol Smith, and a bunch of articles. I went through the entirety of the internet trying to learn these things. I was like, there are some things missing here. So I decided to fill the gap and, you know, like try to push the barriers a little bit on concepts about racing technique, especially because of so much experience that I have built coaching drivers that were beginning, but also drivers that were already on the top 0.1% in iRacing, and now we're competing best teams in the planet. And I was able to help them. I was like, wait, if you think about this thing, it's gonna help you. And they were like, yeah, it actually works. This is a very, 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 very specific book where I contribute with a lot of concepts that I created. So I try to not go through a lot of stuff that is already available on the internet, but if you go through my book, you're gonna have like complementary concepts that are gonna make sense. So basically a bunch of stuff like slip angle or the conception of weight transfer is so easy to get it wrong, but if you feel it the right way, then a lot of things that you learned before that didn't make sense start to make sense. So this is my contribution. It's like you start putting the pieces together and then clicking. So as soon as a student sends me a message on Discord, hey, I just had an aha moment and I got better. That's my mission accomplished right there. It's only about car handling, so it's literally about what you do with the car in terms of rotation. I do not talk about car setup. I do not talk about racecraft or fighting for position because I'm hyper-focused on how you can go faster, how you can understand the car, how you can understand yourself. There's a lot of self-improvement in terms of like tension, mental approach, in terms of what you do with your body, posture. There's a bunch of stuff that if you're not comfortable, you're not gonna drive fast. And a lot of other things. This is a pretty big book. It's 310 pages, 130 images.
Which is good for me. I need pictures in a book.
No. Visualization is so important. I wanted to make sure I was putting in images as much as possible to make sure that it's, if it's only text, it's even for me, it's also difficult to understand. So I'm like, if you see me like coaching on YouTube or whatever, I'm always gesturing and trying to make a visual explanation. So on the book, the image is the way to go.
So who's the book for? That's probably the simplest question.
Here's the thing about this book. The way I explain it is accessible to everyone. So if you're just starting, you will understand it. You will not be able to apply everything right away, but you will understand it because it's accessible. I try to not use complicated terms. Depending on your stage, you're gonna benefit in a different way. So if you're just starting, you're gonna know where you're headed to in your technique, and you're gonna prevent very bad habits. Like you're gonna prevent them because you understand what is the goal. You're gonna go straight to there. If you're very advanced, then you're gonna either fix many bad habits that you took, or you're gonna start putting words to things that you were doing by intuition. I'm gonna tell you a story. Like this was 2 weeks ago. I was racing a radical in real life for the first time. And one of my teammates, he was flying. He was super fast. But when we were analyzing the lap times with the coach asked him, on this corner, on this frame, flat out corner, 200 per hour, the coach asked him, if you turned the steering a tiny bit more, what would happen? And he answered, I have no idea what would happen. And when I saw that, I was like, that's insane. How are you going like 200 kph flat out in a corner, and you don't know, you can't explain what is going to happen if you add more steering. You know, I even was like, that's dangerous. So for me, it's like you have to be aware of what you're doing. You have to be on top of every fraction of a second to know what's going to happen and to have control, full control of the car. And if you just trust on intuition and you try to do everything like by heart, then it might bite you after. But if you try to be fully aware of all the steps, then you become a much more consistent driver. You become a better driver for your team because you're able to give proper feedback. You're gonna understand the car setup changes that the team makes to you. And this goes for real life and simulator. So basically, the more you understand about your own technique, the more you're gonna understand about the car, and the more you're gonna be able to communicate these things to the team or whatever environment you are.
So you mentioned this book is all about handling. So to the consumer, what 3 major points of handling would you say this book addresses?
Making sure you understand what are the traction limits, both longitudinally and laterally. How effective is your braking on a fully straight line, depending on many different changing factors, like how much downforce the car has, whether you're going uphill, downhill, crest compression. Also, when you start turning in, what are the effects of the engine braking and so on. So the first thing is understanding fully peak traction longitudinally, and then how efficiently can the car rotate and what is the best line so that you can use the 4 tires at every fraction of a second from the time you start braking all the way to the very late exit of the corner. How can you maximize and keep that? And there are many missing pieces that as soon as you put them together, everything makes sense. You're going to be able to decide what line you're going to take. You're going to be able to know what gear you're going to take based on like how much engine braking you want, and then it gets technical, but you master peak deceleration, you master peak rotation, and then you master everything in between. Those 3 things pretty much summarize what I'm going to be talking about in this book.
I obviously met you last year for the first time. We worked together a few times before that, and I'm very interested about your story, real life racing, sim racing, coaching. So just tell, the people at home a little bit about your story of how you got to this point.
I started my career in piano, and I went to Canada to do my master's degree in classical piano. So I was actually playing with orchestras, doing competitions. I have over 10 competitions, prizes in Brazil and international. I was focused on playing piano.
This is where it gets annoying for most people because you're just good at everything. No. Ridiculous.
I mean, there's a bridge. There's a deep connection between human technique and whatever art you do. Like if you're good at a piano, you're gonna transfer a bunch of things, a bunch of like sensitivity, the way you connect with your body, the way you feel your muscles, and the way you understand like the way you communicate with the racing car. That somehow I brought a little bit of that from piano. I think it's very connected. It's like speaking a language. When you learn the second one, like it's difficult, but then the third, fourth is easier because you start understanding the patterns. But anyways, I went to Canada to do my piano master's degree. I started coaching to pay for the tuition, and then it exploded, partially because of COVID. I had so many students. I was teaching sometimes 35 sessions a week. After I got better and better and better and better, and I saw that it became an actual solid business. One winter day in Canada, I just had this brilliant idea of creating a checklist. Like, how can I create a list of things that if you go through them in a very practical way, you can become a better driver? Because I was always coaching one-to-one. I was like, what if I could create something that you can go through and then you can get better? So that's the idea of my online course that I created. And it exploded again. Like it went so well. It allowed me to pay for my first season in real life. And that was all money from coaching, from courses, or from my pocket. And then I started racing. I got best experience possible that I could in real life. I was always documenting everything and creating content on Instagram, creating content on YouTube, initially to advertise my own coaching. But then I started realizing that I was becoming kind of like a persona on YouTube and representing that a sim racer can go to real life. And I started doing that more and more and more and more and more, to the point where I, this year, started racing in Formula 4. Got wins, got podiums, and now I tested a Radical. And next year, I'm 99% sure I'm going to be racing a full season. So pretty much my racing career is starting to solidify, and now I see that there's a direction. I have a very clear plan for the next 5 years. There's a volume 1 here. There's going to be a volume 2. I'm hiring professional drivers and professional engineers to help me write the second volume that's going to be about racecraft and about car setup. And that's a plan for 2025, 2026 to have all 3 volumes published. And in the meantime, I'm just going to continue to do that transition to real life, learn more, improve the books. And then this is a continuous circle where I'm just trying to give back to the community. At some point, it was really not about me only. I was like, wait, I can represent this bubble that is growing a lot. It's an inspiration to a lot of people, and I love to be inspiring more people, more and more people, so I will continue to do so.
You briefly mentioned COVID. Obviously, sim racing just went bang, it exploded during COVID. No one could go out, they couldn't work, we were stuck at home just doing laps. Well, I certainly was. I call this now the post-COVID era, everything's sort of settled down. Have you noticed a decrease with the coaching, or has it just continually gone upwards?
It keeps growing. It keeps growing. I think Drive to Survive is one of the things that I noticed. Like, wow, there's so many people. I'm now coaching kids who got into motorsports because of Drive to Survive. And then 4 years later, they're competing seriously. So I see a whole influx, a new generation coming from many different sources. And I mean, content creation, YouTube, Instagram, I see a lot of people saying they started racing because they saw like a short on their feed. Although COVID was a boom and then it kind of cooled down a little bit, there are still consequences of like things are just spreading like that. It's not gonna stop. More people from the real life scene are taking sim racing seriously, both to train but also to identify and bring more talent and creating this bridge that is stronger than ever. So I think the way is up.
So you went from playing piano, then you got into a real world of racing, then sim racing, real world sim racing at the same time, and now a lot of coaching, writing books, of course. What motivates you each day to come up with these new ideas?
I think it's the fact that some of my ideas are creative and unique, and I think the way I explain this helped so many people, and no one has ever talked in that way to them. So I was like, wait, that's something that maybe I brought some crazy ideas from the piano. Actually, not maybe, 100% sure, a bunch of these ideas here come from piano. So because I have something to contribute that's kind of unique, I'm just gonna waste it, let's hyper focus on that, and that's gonna be my legacy. Hopefully in 20 years, 30 years, this is gonna be out there. I'm gonna for sure improve it. Ross Bentley wrote 11 books. This is my first, and I look up to him. It's like, I wanna create this positive influence in the scene. It's the best work of my life, I promise.
Thank you very much for your time. We can have a round of applause there for Sueli Almeida.
Thank you.